Hello and welcome to the program. My name is Michael Finney. Today, I am joined by UK-based author Malory. Would you like to say hello, sir?
Yes, hello. Very excited to be able to talk to you all and looking forward to talking to you about my work and things like that.
Fantastic. Let's get into who you are. We don't know you. We want to know you. Tell us about you. Where you're from particularly, any biographical information that we should know to get into the headspace of who you are, where you came from, what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. I've been a full-time writer now for a couple of years. I was doing a job that wasn't giving me a huge amount of satisfaction and writing on Royal Road of an evening, and got very lucky that somebody really liked the series that I was writing. And that was picked up by a publisher, which meant I was able to give up the job that wasn't especially fulfilling and start doing this full time. That's almost exactly 2 years ago today. Actually, was the start of that. So it's been a long time of writing since then, really. But yes, it's Royal Road as a method of getting yourself recognised and getting people to read your work has definitely worked out for me.
Love it. You weren't writing before that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've written my whole life, really. I think it's something that you just love doing, isn't it? But I think I've only ever really done it for friends and family, and they obviously are very keen on telling you how fantastic everything that they read from you is. But you never really do anything with it, do you? And it was only a friend at work had sort of suggested I just start putting some stuff up on Royal Road and getting some feedback, really, because you do need feedback beyond just your nearest circle, don't you? And I don't know if you're aware of Royal Road, but my word, you get some very vocal feedback from there, and it was very helpful, really, to spot all the ways that things I was doing weren't working and how to twist and adapt them around to things that were more grabbing of an audience. And having put all of that in place, it's worked out for me so far.
Yeah, I am familiar with Royal Road. I know a number of people using it, basically to serialize and release in an episodic fashion their incredibly long works.
I think for me, it was more of a discipline thing, because the nature of it is, yes, it's episodic, but I very much viewed them as chapters. But they were chapters that there was a very strong, loud audience being quite angry if you didn't get things out in a timely manner. So I think that aspect of it, the need to sort of fulfill a deadline that wasn't just in your head anymore, was probably the key for me making a bit more of a press at doing it, because you miss a couple of days and you come back to a host of messages telling you you're the worst person in the history of existence, suddenly starts motivating you to write a bit faster. And I think that was quite a key thing for me, really. My writing isn't especially episodic. It was more making sure that I managed to get chapters out, really.
Yeah, I think that people do really need that side of things where they're kind of their backs against the wall and they've got some deadlines. I think it helps.
Yes,
a lot of people in that sense. I'm deadline oriented.
I think adrenaline is a great motivator,
isn't it? Yeah, but also the expectations of an audience, I think, kind of does that too.
Yeah, and I think once you start realizing that people do want to read what you're writing, that again is a massive motivator. You think, well, you don't want to lose that person who gets bored and goes and reads something else because you've been too slow. And I think a big part of certainly my motivation in that has been to try to keep that sense of momentum going forward, because not necessarily wanting to go back to the day job is quite a big motivator as well. And knowing that an audience will stick with you as long as you keep providing is quite a big thing.
So I'm hearing in these early days that you had a fickle and demanding audience that you were developing on Royal Road. That's my perception.
That would be a polite way of putting it, yes.
That's good, though. Tell us maybe a little bit about your influences, who you look to over the course of your life that you've read, that you're like, man, their work is really great. I love what they've done. I would like to emulate some of their stuff, or just, take little bits of, I don't know, the kernels and remix it?
Yes, I mean, I'm sat in my study at the moment, and I'm surrounded by the books of Terry Pratchett and photographs and models and things made from his work. I think I would say that the Discworld series has been by far and away my biggest influence. I started reading that as a 10, 11-year-old, and that has really stuck with me over my whole life. Sadly, when he died and finished producing, was the last time I stopped buying books every time they came out, really. And I think Pratchett's work, I think, is something that really does grab, particularly in the voice in which I write, and that slightly sarcastic, slightly knowing narrator style is something that as it crosses over all of my work, really, and does seem to be things that the audience respond quite well to. That and Douglas Adams as well, of course. Tom Holt, those sort of authors are ones that I think have always sort of grabbed hold of me, really, and wanting to try to find others that replicate that sort of tone.
Here's a question for you. Let's get into the real nitty gritty here. Fantasy or sci-fi, which is better?
Oh, well, fantasy, I think, is what grabs me first. I think I do like the idea of it was just magic. I think there is something quite liberating about that as a reader and as a writer. I think you're able to have a lot of fun with that notion. I am a fan of sci-fi. I think I instinctively find the hard rules that can often be part of that somewhat more limiting. I very much like Ian K. Banks. But I do find that some of those very elaborate world buildings do start to lose me a little bit, in a way that something like Wheel of Time never does, which is weird, really, because it's such a massive all-spanning work.
For sure.
But yes, Sandals and Sorcery, I think, is probably my great love, rather than battleships and lasers.
Sure, fair. I feel like there's an audience for both, right? And there's these genre tropes for both. I don't necessarily prefer one or the other. I think if there's something captivating about a story, that's kind of the key for me. Or even kind of merging those two things, weird bits of magical technology. Even I like steampunk kind of stuff.
Yes. And after all, the reason why Star Wars has grabbed so many people is that there is that blur, isn't there? It's basically a fantasy epic in space, and I think that using of both of those tropes is part of its legacy, really. But yeah, steampunk's cool. I think anything in that sort of Victorian, that sort of Dickensian quality to it's very attractive as well.
Yeah, I don't even mind. I think in the future, we could look back at today and there could be some aspect of steampunk that we apply to this era of history too. I don't know what it is. We'll find out in the future, but I just think that sort of stuff. And I was looking at someone else who had explored the idea. I see a lot of stuff, but they were putting together a story that was basically, what if the Roman Empire never fell? And also the Industrial Revolution started 500 years earlier than it did. And it's just an interesting juxtaposition of ideas. I like that you can do those kind of things inside of writing and the work that we do as authors. Are there any people on the scene, broadly speaking, that you appreciate or that you look to and anticipate their releases?
I mean, I think just because I think of the genre I mostly write in, I think I have to mention Matt Dinnerman. I think the huge both success and also just scope of Dungeon Crawler Carl has been really inspiring, and I think it has been for a lot of people who sort of work in that progressive fictions and fantasy sort of area. I think that is an idea that you can take something that is an incredibly silly idea and deal with it in a really sincere and powerful way that people react to is fantastic. And I think, as well as that, I'd say there's a fantastic series called Beware of Chicken by Casual Farmer. And it is a fantastic satire, really, on all of the sort of Eastern manga anime tropes, really, around cultivation fiction. And that, again, I think it's up to book 7, I think, at the moment. And just a consistently funny, well-reasoned and greatly affectionate take on things. I think those two, certainly at the moment, I feel are very much in the forefront of my mind when I'm writing.
Okay. Now, I generally know what lit RPG is, but I don't think I have a good grasp of progression fantasy. And I can explicitly tell you I have no idea what a cultivation novel is. So maybe give us a little bit of detail.
Yes, the problem is that you sort of live inside a community and you think everybody knows the words you use. So I apologise.
No, it's
basically
fine.
Lit RPG, as you've I think you alluded to it. It's a literary game, really. So it's taking the concepts of gaming and making a book out of them. So if people are familiar with things like Ready Player One, they've got a generally good idea about what Lit RPG is. The key thing about Lit RPG is the numbers appear in the text. So that when the person is reading the book, they're seeing the character literally level up as the story moves on. So rather than just somebody get more powerful, they can actually quantify the power changes that occur, and it's incredibly popular with readers. And I think that sort of ability to quantify ability and quantify merit and quantify the ways in which actions have consequences is resonating with readers at the moment. So that's Lit RPG. And progression fantasy is really a version of that where the numbers matter less. So it's a very similar sort of style of writing, but I think for those that are less obsessed with the need for statistics and numbers and tables, perhaps less of an interest in Dungeons and Dragons, for example, would not necessarily need the stat table. Progression fantasy is that. And then cultivation is progression fantasy from a more Eastern sort of philosophy. So cultivation fiction is very much about, rather than just somebody's numbers going up or getting more power, they're actually developing their internal chi. So it's a process of meditation, a process of really working internally to get stronger. Whereas Lit RPG and progression fantasy is kill a goblin, get power back from doing that. Cultivation's a more internal version of that. But really, all three of them, you will have readers that like one will like all three, really. And readers that like fantasy should like it all, I would have thought.
Who knew? I feel like we try to, I don't know, compartmentalize, box up these ideas to give ourselves terms to market around, which is fine. It's good. You probably need to do it, particularly as readers and audiences niche down and get obsessed with any one thing or aspect or whatever the case might be.
Yeah. I think also there is a slightly maverick quality, I think, as well to the growth of Lit RPG, certainly in the last few years, which has all come largely outside of publishing houses. So I think that notion of a subculture that's grown up on Discord and Reddit and Royal Road and has, to a certain extent, been able to carve out a reasonably successful niche without any gatekeepers. I think that has been a big drive for it, and the biggest success really with these texts is on audios. So Audible Books and Podium and Royal Guard as producers of works that are not necessarily things that people have to sit and read, but can be things people can listen to on commutes. And I think we generally know that a huge part of the audience of Lit RPG are people that are travelling huge distances, largely across America, and therefore need audiobooks that are going to be within that sort of 40-hour length in order to fill a journey. And certainly that's been a big part of quite a lot of people's success.
Yeah, that's interesting. I for sure have found a growing audience in audiobooks for the stuff that I release. let's talk a little bit about your catalog. You have, at this point out, a lot of titles. Just looking through your Amazon listing and stuff like that, there is a slew of stuff. And inside of 2 years, you're kind of killing it.
Well, I think the experience on Royal Road of having to write quickly has stood me in good stead, really. And I write quite cleanly as well. So I think editors tend to find that working with me is a reasonably easy process. I haven't really. I mean, a lot of what's on my Amazon list is I've been very fortunate getting a lot of short stories into Raconteur Press, which has been awesome. I've never really written short stories before, so that's been a really good experience. So I think a lot of what you see on there are my stories within there. I've got three series that are out at the moment. The first one, which is the one that I wrote with Royal Guard, is called Psychomarine. That's sci-fi, pure and simple, really. They had an open call where they were asking people to pitch them ideas, and I contacted them and I pitched them about 5 or 6 different ideas for novels, and they went like, they're all absolutely terrible ideas. How about this one? And they gave me an idea and said, write us a couple of chapters and we'll see where we go from there. And I did and wrote. I wrote 6 for them altogether, all released on audio, which have done quite well. All released on the Royal Guard list, which has been brilliant. And that really set me up because the experience of working with a press that wanted very, very specific things from you and would tell you when you weren't necessarily hitting the right beats for them was brilliant, because that really helped me narrow down what I was good at and what I was necessarily not that good at. And they're very, very, they're fundamentally Pulp Fiction, really. You've got a character who is trying to save the world from alien invasions, chases them off Earth, chases them off Mars, chases them across the galaxy, frees all of his friends. It was really a lot of fun to write, and I think people have found it a lot of fun as well. I've also learned people hate things that are written with an English accent. So that was the last series that I wrote with a specifically English accent, and all my characters from then on have been American.
Gotcha.
Yes, things that I think make perfect sense as slang apparently don't make a lot of sense. The reason that I think Psychomarine 1 did quite well was there was a very, very lengthy discussion over many days over my use of the word yank at one stage. And I had an American character from the Deep South call somebody else a Yank. And the length and depth of discussion about whether I was right or wrong to do so was amazing. And my editor was American, and I remember contacting him and saying, have I got this wrong? And he went, no, they're just all insane. And people were quoting the Constitution and where the line was supposed to be drawn and whether she was allowed to call them that. And I think that helped it blow up, because I think everybody just had to read. It was not one word in a 130,000 page novel, 130,000 word novel that has sort of sparked a lot of people to read it.
Hey, you take your wins where you can get them.
Absolutely. Marketing is marketing.
Yeah. If people are gravitating towards an argument inside of your work, then they're still gravitating towards your work. Take it.
Absolutely.
I also am on the short story train in general and broadly.
Yes.
I don't have anything really long. I don't even have a novel. I don't know if I will. Maybe one day, some point. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. I'm happy to just explore the form,
yes,
and kind of build stuff out that way. Do you find overlap for what you're doing regardless? I mean, in the sense that like you're building a large cosmology of characters and world building, maybe universe building if it's the sci-fi side of things. I don't know.
I think the thing that I found so liberating really with writing for and submitting to RAC has been how very prescriptive their calls are. So rather than just send us an 8,000 word short story, it's a very, very closed, very, very focused call where they need some homework from you to understand the sort of genre they want. There's a particular voice that they're looking for. There's an editor connected to it that wants a certain thing. And I think I found it in the midst of writing quite long novels that sprawl a bit because to be able to turn things into audiobooks, my editors are clear I have to be above 100,000, because that's where you start to get to 11 hours long on an audiobook, which is important. And I think when you're trying to write things that are 100,000 words long, you tend to be a bit saggy and a bit less self-discriminating over the words you choose. Whereas writing a short story, every word really has to justify its existence. The first few I submitted to RAC, I didn't get anywhere, and it was because I was writing beyond the limit of the words that they wanted, and it took me some while to realise that actually when they say 5 to 8, they mean that, and handing something in that's 10 that you think's genius isn't going to go anywhere. And I think making certain that you adapt your voice and adapt. I mean, I tend to like first-person narration as a first port of call, but being able to sort of play around with third person has been really interesting, particularly within a very, very particular environment. So whether it's one of the favourite ones I wrote for them, they wanted something very Chandler-esque, which is a really distinct voice and a really stripped-back approach. And that's quite contrary to my normal style. And I think that was really useful. And I think even if I wasn't being picked up for publication, the act of doing it has been actually just made me a much better writer.
Let's talk about Raconteur Press and the great work they're doing over there for a minute. I don't know all of the mechanics, the ins and outs of how they are producing what is just an astounding body of work and pace, honestly, and frankly. Like, they're just face melting amount of work over there.
Yes, it's amazing.
Yeah. And it's the reason why we got connected through them.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel about working with them, maybe in comparison to other publishers, or, what do you think about the trajectory that they're on? Anything, insightful from your experience there that might be applicable to other writers listening to our discussion or wanting to work with RAC?
I mean, I think I've been incredibly fortunate in the publishers that I've worked with. That I think all of them share a very similar philosophy, which is there are stories that people want to read that aren't getting published, and that there's a real desire and an audience out there for more old-fashioned, more character-driven, more action-packed writing, which generally traditional publishing has moved away from almost entirely, certainly in the last few years. And I think Raconteur Press in particular, I read some of their mission statements and watched some of their videos, pretty much everything they were saying resonated almost entirely with how I felt about why I wasn't a full-time writer, which was gatekeeping, not necessarily telling the sort of story anybody wanted to buy at this stage, even though you sort of know that there is an audience out there because you're that audience as well. And I think that's what my experience of working with RAC has been, is that they're publishing anthologies of work that I want to read. I want to read plasma pulp. I want to read Chandler-esque short stories. I want to read military sci-fi. But there isn't actually traditional publishing that's even bothering to pretend that audience of largely, and not entirely, but largely guys don't read. And the reason that guys don't read is that it wasn't always a lot of fun at school. And then a lot of things that we would want to read about just don't necessarily get published anymore. And that drive to fill that gap, I think, is something that RAC are doing brilliantly. And I think the fact that every time they produce an anthology, it very, very quickly gets an orange tag on Amazon shows you that there's an audience out there that will buy short story anthologies, which apparently is a completely taboo thing and nobody should ever do that and no one's ever going to buy them.
Yeah, it's silly how traditional publishing operates in an exclusive sense, that some of these other smaller entities are able to illustrate why that is backwards thinking or, outright wrong in terms of audience development.
Yes, I mean, I mentioned Matt Dinnerman earlier as the sort of poster child for lit RPG, and that largely is because he's really the only lit RPG author that's broken from being an indie published author into being mainstream, and you will find him now in pretty much every every Waterstones and Barnes and Noble and Airport Lounge up and down the country. And I think that's almost the poster child for what you want to do. You want to have something where there is an audience, people want to read it. And even though there isn't a desire to publish it generally, when it does get published, it goes huge. And I think it's very affirming to see things like Matt, and also with Raconteur Press's success, to see, well, do you know what? People will read this stuff. You just need to get it out there and get it in front of them. And to a large extent, I think Amazon has been really helpful in that, because I think it's democratized the way in which you can get books to people, that you don't just now need to have something on a shelf in a bookshop. You can have it in a digital store. You can have print on demand publishing, which means that it suddenly becomes much more available. That if you've got a talented illustrator as they've got, you've got good editors as they've got, you can put out a really professional looking production in a way that wouldn't happen in any other sphere, really.
Let's talk about your release with Raconteur Press, The Weird Map and Mr. Glim's Skull. What should we know? What don't we know?
So this is one of their boys adventure stories. If you look at my back catalogue, there isn't an awful lot that my 8-year-old boy can read there. It's very a little bit violent, a little bit above what I'd want to be putting anywhere near him, really. And Raconteur Press about a year ago, I think, started to ask for authors who wanted to do old-fashioned boys stories, really. So the sort of things that we read when we were younger, that again have sort of vanished entirely. And I sat down and I had to think about the sort of thing that my boy would want to read. He's very, well, we won't say naughty, but he's spirited. But he likes to read. But the sort of books that are aimed at his age group are a bit too old, really. I think young adult is a really murky area of fiction that I don't think anybody would really want 8, 9, 10-year-olds to read.
Yeah.
So I tried to work out, well, how could you get that sort of peril and that sort of adventure thrill that you'd have from a story where things might go wrong, but they always don't. And that's what I tried to do here, really. It's quite I tried to go scary, but not too scary. I tried to go peril, but not too much peril. And also just tried to have a book that had a really nice friendship between two lads, but also with a really good family dynamic there as well. So there was no trauma, there was no need for there to be loss of parent or any sort of horrible backstory there. You've just got a really normal family dynamic, a really fun family dynamic, and everything works out well in the end.
Yeah, comfy, cozy reading for the youth. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, with dead bodies falling out of cupboards and aliens and Russian spies and things. That's the balance, isn't it? You want it to feel that it's something that's safe, but also something that he said was when he read through the draft, he was like, "This is really freaky." Like, good. That's how I remember reading when I was reading books and going, "This is really weird and really strange." And I don't think there are those sort of books anymore. Everything's either too safe or too unsafe. And I think if you look at all of the Rack Boy stories, you've got things where everything goes beyond being safe, but always works out at the end, which is the perfect adventure story.
Excellent. Now, let's hear a little bit about your newest title coming out from Raconteur Press called The Clockwork Terror of Blackglass Island.
Yes, it's it follows on really from the first one, which is the weird map in Mr. Glim's Skull. So I'm a big fan of the pulp title, and really it's set a couple of months after the first one, and really it's just a brand new adventure, really set inside the same world. So we've got Felix again, and we've got William, but this time we take them on a school trip. So what we have is, rather than it being based within the school and the idea that the terror and the bad guys and the monsters are all around the school, we put them on a coach, we put a supply teacher with them, and we take them to a sort of unpopulated island off the coast of Northumberland. And when they get there, it's all sorts of shenanigans go down.
Now, how many entries in this series do you anticipate releasing over the course of the series?
I don't know, really. I think
making it up as you go, huh?
Well, yes, I think I'm a big fan of things like the famous five and things like that, where actually you have a sort of consistency in that you have the same characters and you have the same vibe, but actually the idea of there being a chronology isn't necessarily important. So the characters aren't growing up, the characters aren't necessarily developing or changing or having life altering things happen that mean the next one can't be largely from the same sort of idea. And I like that idea of that sort of frozen sort of time period of childhood, really. So if this one's as popular as the last one was, there might very well be a third, and you never know.
Nice.
They're quite good fun to write.
Kind of episodic bottle episodes. You don't see so much of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice way of looking at it. I think sometimes you get in certainly that mid-grade young adult fiction that the characters get older, and as they get older, sort of the nature of the book changes because the nature of children growing up changes. But I'm a big fan of Bart Simpson still being exactly the same age as he is now as he was when I was a kid. And I think there's a lot to be said for that sort of bottle episode idea.
Are there any things that we have not talked about yet that you feel are important for the discussion today?
No, I don't think so. I think it is that notion, really, that I think if you're a writer out there, that it's the importance of just doing it, because it would have been really easy, I think, for me not to have done it, and just carried on writing for myself and enjoying that and never really getting the experience of just sitting down and putting pen to paper. I think quite often the white page can and the fear of, oh, people won't like it or nobody's going to want to read my stuff just inhibits us from ever really getting on with it. And I've had a great 2 years, really, of, yes, it's hard and you have to treat writing like it's your job and you've kind of days off and you have to really, really make sure that you're making it work. But it really has been a great 2 years, really, and I'd recommend it to anybody.
Excellent. I'm very happy that you are finding success inside of your own work and the work you're doing with publishers. Great conversation, Malory. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today.
No worries, really enjoyed it. Thank you.